son, I always wanted to be a dinosaur when I was a kid. And it challenges me. I start to think, well, if I had a hypothetical son or daughter, and I'm telling them, son, daughter, you can be whatever you want when you grow up. Well, Dad, you really mean that? Yes, I do. Be what, if you fall down, you pick yourself back up, son, daughter.
By your bootstraps.
Yeah, by your bootstraps.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Arguments and Logic, Episode 7, where we put the critic in critical thinking. I'm Robert Sykes.
And I'm Patrick Frazier. I'll get us started with this clickbait headline. Elon Musk, we love Elon Musk, unleashes racist rant against Americans, calling them retarded.
Nailed it.
Whoa. Do you care to elaborate, sir?
Well, I think we're talking about this tweet that went out that says, basically the tech is divided into two factions, and it says that, some people think that tech workers are retarded, right? I don't think I need to read it verbatim, do I? Or do you want me to?
I'm really on the fence of whether or not we need to bleep the R word, but yeah, read as much as you want for the context.
Wow, we gotta bleep it, huh? Is that
I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do.
So can I just say R word now? Like, how you would say blah 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 N word, and then
yes,
you would, right? So I could say R word. So it says the quote is like basically the right is split into two factions: tech right and right. And the tech right is like, hey, we need H-1B visas, people to do the jobs, and the right is like, no, you need to hire Americans, and the tech right is like, but you guys are R word, and the right is like, well, you don't train us, and the tech right is like, you can't out-train being R word. And while all this was going on, we learned some people really don't like Indians, which is from, I don't remember who said this. Do you know who said this, who tweeted this, or how this got on?
I have a link to an article where I was able to find screenshots of this that
Alan someone or other.
But whoever it was, it didn't strike me as anyone I know. But I mean, that doesn't say much.
The article I read had his name, and I think it was someone. I don't know.
No, it has a person, but I don't recognize. I mean, I'll click on the article and I'll see who it is.
How does it even have merit, and why would Musk even chime in? Anyways,
well,
Musk, the wonderful 3 a.m. Twitter god that he is, says that that pretty much sums it up. This was eye-opening. And I guess he said this on December 27th. H-1B visas are an interesting idea. I guess that's what we're going to jump into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, so I've worked in tech for a lot of years, and you and I had talked about this, and it's interesting because when we originally talked about it, I was really thinking I was going to go one way, and then I did some more additional reading on it and some other people's ideas. And this is one of the wonderful things about keeping an open mind, people, is that you keep an open mind and you let the information flow in, and then you make your determination based on more facts, and you can change your opinion. It's a wonderful thing that you can do. But my personal experience is that when I'm dealing with, higher level support technicians, okay, I'm not talking about you call in and your printer's broken. I'm talking about like someone doing some advanced configuration on a firewall, someone doing some advanced configurations within the virtual host, either VMware or Hyper-V, your flavor or whatever. In my experience, and this is my fallacy and because it's just based on my own experience, the technicians that are from other countries, even the ones that you get who initially answer the phone, have a greater aptitude and a greater understanding of technology as a whole and how it relates to their product than the Americans do. So you'll frequently get a call center that's in that's in Dallas or it's in somewhere in America, and they're clearly Americans, and it's a much different road to try to explain to them basic computing around a problem. And so, because initially you have to get past the gatekeeper a lot of times. And then once you get to the tier 3 technicians, there's a whole world of difference. And like, from my experience, most of them are Indian anyways. It depending on when you call. So my time zone, PST, it's typically I get India. If I call later at night or on the weekends, I will get China sometimes, or I will get like what's not Japan, I think Taiwan occasionally, and but anyways, my point is that I mean it's one of the things that I've seen that I don't know that they're wrong, you know, in here. I don't know that they're wrong about Americans struggling with this level of technology. And I think it comes down to the dumbing down of our universities and our educational facilities.
Okay, and then I think when we talked about that, I had originally hypothesized that maybe the difference was that in India, maybe they had more of a track kind of system where they put people on these individual tracks. And after doing more of a deep dive on that, it turns out there's a lot of nuance. Number one, they're now changing their education system to be more like our system in a lot of ways. But it's definitely not like that dystopian nightmare hellscape of At-Aten and Skeleton Crew, where Star Wars has these little kids that are like 10 or 12 years old, and they take a test, and then some bureaucrat basically tells them what their whole track in life is. I even have a link that I'll try to include in the description anyway, where it shows an Indian kid who's not sure about which stream, they call them streams, he wants to take. But it's a lot like when we go to university in the United States, the second half of high school in India is like pre-university, I think they called it. And he had to decide between doing what we would call STEM, science and tech stream versus a business, well, they call it commerce business stream, or a art stream, which is like liberal arts, some fine arts, of course,
But
humanity.
aren't they more math and science heavy than we are on the standard, like everyday, like they're 10th for apples to oranges, 10th grade in America and 10th grade in India is far different as far as the level of math and science that's required, right?
Right, and that would go to how we approach middle school more than anything as opposed to high school. So that's a valid point. I was thinking in terms of the preparation for whether or not someone's going to have a college bound education or a vocational based education. And now India is kind of going more in that direction too. So on one hand, they're eliminating the these artificial barriers between science and the arts, so that it's
Mhm.
more like a real university, and you can just take whatever class, even though it's pre-university. So it's more in terms of just maximizing the agency for those kids. But they are also creating a new track that's specifically for vocational type learning. And I have a link to a big old article on it, but as far as I can discern at this point, they're still erring more or less on the side of agency. Of course, there's going to be social pressure on the part of parents who say, "Hey, son, I want you to do this or that," but I don't see that it's any kind of dystopian thing where the kid doesn't have some agency, or at least as much agency as, say, their American counterpart would have.
As far as what they want to do, or
Right.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that it's probably twofold. I believe that they're they're just much more advanced when it comes to their training and their overall understanding and their overall schooling around it. I mean, because let's face it, like I and universities are just buy a piece of paper these days in America. I mean, you know, from my experience, I don't think that they're that challenging anymore. Um, Going to college in 2000, when I started going to college and I got my first degree in networking, and then going back to college in 2015, and then going back to college again
Mm-hmm.
in 2022. I mean, from what I saw, I just watched the curve degrade as far as difficulty. When I was going to college in 2000, it was, and even in 99, 98 at San Diego City College, the requirements were just much more difficult, in my opinion. I mean, either I got really, really smart over those 20 years and just learned how to play the game, um, or what I think is that the experience is degraded. I just think that with universities fighting so much to get people to attend, and it being a business driven by a board that needs to make money, even at the public level, I get it that they're publicly funded, but they still need to make money. They still have to pay the bills. They still have a board the board of regents typically that they have to respond to, that they've just made it too easy in America and at all levels.
Well, I think that on the one hand, I have an experience that's a little bit different. And before I address that, I do think that your argument does hold some water. There are uh,
It holds all the
studies,
water, Patrick. It holds all the water. I'm
holds all the water. Well, there are
100%.
studies. There are studies that allude to the evidence of grade inflation, I guess you'd call it,
Mm,
where there are more A's than there used to be, et cetera. And I think some of that may be because of the supply and demand issues, especially after COVID. And this has been going on a lot longer than COVID, so there's only so much blame you can attribute to COVID. But that's definitely a big part of it, where standards just went appreciably down for high school and college kids after so many people just weren't getting any education at that point in time. And my own anecdotal experience during COVID as a math teacher during that time was that the kids who were already getting A's, and some of them that were getting B's, were the only kids who actually submitted any work during that first shutdown, where everybody, where they shut down all the schools and the kids were, supposedly still, getting on Zoom meetings and so forth. But most of them weren't, at least in my experience. My job was literally just to essentially take role and contact, if not them, their parents, someone in their family, and just verify that the kid's still around for anyone that was like in my third period class or something like that. And the learning part of it just kind of took a was on the back burner. And there were kids who reached out, or their parents did, and said, "Oh, there's this packet, and this kid needs help on this problem." So there was some work being done, but for the most part, again, it was kids who were already getting A's and B's, and then they told us to basically not give any F's to anyone at that time too.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there's that part of it, but also on my own experience as a lifetime learner. I have a degree in economics, and I started out, which is from the business college, as opposed to like a social science oriented econ degree. And I started out as a journalism major, and now I've gone back to school to get a second bachelor's, this time in civil engineering. And I can tell you, grade inflation or not, STEM oriented degrees are still much harder than business degrees, and
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
it's still much harder than liberal arts degrees. And I love the liberal arts, but STEM is just harder. And classes like Calculus 2 and Calculus 3 are still hard classes. I think maybe they're easier.
But it's really easy to quantify those, right? So that's,
Yeah,
like you have to know formulas, you have to know how to do these problems, and that's all there is to it, period.
right.
But all the other classes that contribute to that education, like whether it's biology, because biology and chemistry as a whole have chemistry maybe not as much, but like biology, anthropology, some of these like not so hard sciences are easier now, 100% easier. There's no way I guarantee you they are, but when you're talking like calculus 2, like you just there's shit you have to know. You talk
Right.
trigonometry, you got to know it. That's never going to change too much, but I bet you, I, you know, some of these things, and you're you're talking an engineering degree. Like I would hope that our engineers are getting harder classes, but all the rest of the stuff, all the filler classes,
Yeah.
they're just no brainers. And I mean, that's part of it. That's part of this whole idea that we've sold this whole bill of goods to our children, where we just tell them they can be whatever they want to be. Like, if you only work hard, you can be whatever you want to be, and that's just 100% false. I am never going to be a professional hockey player. As much as I love watching hockey, I'm just not going to be a hockey player. It's not going to happen. Probably wouldn't have happened if I tried to get into hockey when I was 20.
Yeah.
Just wasn't going to happen. I don't have the skill required, the talent.
Well, yeah, and that's your personal decision, however, is where I land at. In the movie Step Brothers, I love the scene where the dad finally comes out of his shell and he says,
Dale, look, when I was a kid, when I was a little boy, I always wanted to be a dinosaur. I wanted to be a Tyrannosaurus Rex more than anything in the world.
"Son, I always wanted to be a dinosaur when I was a kid." And it challenges me. I start to think, well, if I had a hypothetical son or daughter, and I'm telling them, "Son or daughter, you can be whatever you want when you grow up." "Well, Dad, you really mean that?" "Yes, I do. You can be what, if you fall down, you pick yourself back up, son,
By your
daughter."
bootstraps.
Yeah, by your bootstraps. It's about your emotional quotient more than your IQ. "Well, Dad, I want to be a dinosaur." Uh, um, well, yeah, the
Maybe
challenge
it
is,
does.
yeah, yeah, and you had something about Marvel. There was someone who
Yeah,
became,
maybe you turn into Dr. Lizard, where you're like, I'm gonna work on this as a geneticist and turn myself into a dinosaur.
right, and that's sort of my take, is that hopefully you could, hopefully the kid's kind of young when they want to be a dinosaur, as opposed to like someone who's basically a full grown ass woman or
A
man.
40-year-old man saying he wants to be a dinosaur.
Yeah, but it's ultimately your decision to decide how ridiculous your dream is. With the hockey analogy or race car driving or whatever, there's a lot of people that statistically are just not going to make it in sports. Even if you have a lot of talent, there's still, networking and other barriers that may
Even
limit.
with the talent, yeah, you're still got a 1% chance of making it.
Yeah, and who's to say that it's like the flip of a quarter? We've geeked out a few times about the mini worlds thing, but LeBron James, King James, that's great, and I'm happy for him. But imagine just a flip, a butterfly flaps its wings another way, and he could have suffered some horrendous injury, in high school and never made it to being, the great LeBron James. And there's a lot of luck involved, but a lot of people who pursue careers as professional athletes and still fail find careers in coaching. Maybe they're a high school math teacher, geometry teacher or something, who also teaches, also coaches girls basketball or whatever it is. Maybe you have a sports apparel business. There's more than one way to still fulfill your passion. And I think the key is that people have to be flexible. It's,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I just think that it's okay for us to be grounded in some realism when
yeah,
we tell our child, dream big. That's fine. It's fine to dream big, but dream big, but maybe think logically and have a backup plan. I don't know.
yes. And you know, and even Elon Musk validates the importance of having a backup plan. Like we have clowned on him a few times, but he has argued that it's important to have a plan B, even if you have like a crazy, very ambitious plan A. If you don't have a plan B, then you're never really gonna take the risks necessary to
Hmm.
succeed at plan A, because if you fail, then you don't have any net.
Yeah.
And if you know
It's
you have
an
a plan B,
all or nothing kind of deal, right?
right? You know, and there's people who argue that, you know, if you have a plan B, then you're not going to put all your heart and soul into plan A. And I say to each his their own, but I think in this case, Musk and evidently the two of us are, you know, on the side of reason and logic.
Yeah. Well, we would hope, but we'll see what happens. Well,
Uh,
before we run out of time, I think we better talk about immigration too, right?
yes, yes. So there's the potentiality of mirroring some of what India is doing in other countries with different tracks for education. But a country that also gets talked about a lot when Trump's not threatening to invade them and make them the 51st state is our great neighbor to the north, or to the south if you're in Alaska, I suppose.
Canada?
Yeah,
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 Canada.
that's right. Canada. Canada famously has a immigration system that is also very liberal in the sense that if you're a refugee, you know, for humanitarian purposes, etc., they'll take you. If you have family that you want to bring into the country, they'll also do that. But what they don't have is a lottery system like we have. They have a merit-based system. So you get assigned essentially a point for how proficient you are in either English or French. It is Canada after all. You know, you get a point based on you know, aptitudes you have in career fields that they need,
Hmm.
etc. So I think that that is a reasonable policy reform. I don't think that I'm speaking out of left field when I say there has been some degree of xenophobia in our ongoing debate about immigration, but it is possible to advocate for reform in immigration policy without being, you know, innately racist about it. And I think there's something to that's laudable in Canada's immigration system. It's not perfect. I found some links criticized to articles and
Oh yeah,
videos.
I mean none of them are going to be perfect. I mean, how
No,
is that even a thing? Like, I mean, but they may do it better than we do, and this kind of ties into that other video that you sent me that we'll have to link in chat with the female and the comedian and the female researcher who would travel around and she was talking about immigration and like why are the and fertility the
oh,
fertility,
right. The
right?
Economist that had an interview. Yeah.
Yeah, she's an economist. That's right. Yeah, and because we were talking about the lower fertility in the world, and she thinks it's tied to phones, which is a good corollary fact, and it's an interesting video. We'll put a link to it. You guys should check it out. I actually, Patrick was like, she talks about it at 26, whatever, 12
Right,
in
right.
the video, and I watched the whole video because
Wow.
it
I
was
was trying to help you out, brother.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing that she talks about there, and the thing that they bring up is that we have this aging baby boomer population. That Social
Hmm.
Security is going away. Like, how are we going to get enough tax money and tax revenues? And one of the things that is necessary for that is immigration, right?
Yes.
So if we're not having enough kids, then we better bring some immigrants in order to supplement that tax base, And so this is kind of a no-brainer. Like it's so dumb that we even have to like have these conversations and we can't just act logically and rationally in our government. I know that's kind of facetious, but if twofold, right? So we need these H-1B visas because Americans are too R-word. Whether or not that's true, there's some that say that it's just a way for American corporations to get higher caliber workers for less money, which I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, as forthright and upstanding most capitalist large corporations are,
Right.
um, you know, if they can pay half the wage for the same level of worker, and we see this in the engineering industry, we see this in all industries, in call centers, right? We've offshored these jobs to these giant call centers in India,
Right.
or wherever. I just know mostly the Indian ones because that's who I normally deal with.
Hmm.
So, but a lot of that can be solved, right? If you just so you don't need H-1B visas if you're immigrating these people that have the skills that we look for, right? So you shift it, just like you said. What you said makes total sense. You shift it to a merit-based system. We give you more points if you have the skills we're looking for. We then can hand out less H-1B visas, which, by the way, are not that many. It was what, 200,000, 250,000 is the cap or something like
Okay.
that. And then they can have another 90,000, and so I think it was 660,000 in play at any given time. Is, I don't know, don't quote me on that, but that's not there's 300 million people in this country, right? And so that's not a huge fraction of the workplace, and honestly, it doesn't matter. Like, at least if we have them here, they're gonna spend some of their revenue out in the world in businesses within our economy and our local areas, wherever they are,
Hmm.
as opposed to just these companies just offshoring everything. They're gonna do it anyways. I mean, what do you do? I mean, I guess if you're Trump, you just tell them they have to shut down all their call centers, right? Like, every one of these. You want to sell software in America, you can't have any call centers overseas.
Well, that and tariffs are going to solve everything. But
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
yeah,
Looking forward to it. I'm excited.
if,
Excited.
you know, if there's one thing that the two political sides of economics has agreed on for a long time, whether you were a Keynesian kind of left of center
Hmm.
economics professor person or a right of center supply side economics whatever person, they all agreed that tariffs have their place, but a policy that's just centered exclusively around tariffs does not work and can actually also contribute to inflation, just like inhibiting immigrants can also have that impact as well.
So I mean I get a lot of, I get some of the argument though for tariffs. I mean,
Hmm.
pound for pound, dollar for dollar, um, there's a disproportionate amount of tariffs that are applied to American goods being shipped to China as opposed to American Chinese goods being shipped to America. So they tax the hell out of our stuff going the other way. So I understand the like on a cursory level why. I just don't think that it's a very good idea in practice given Americans' absolute addiction to cheap Chinese garbage. Not that all stuff that's made in China is garbage, but you know, a lot of the stuff that we buy, a lot of our products, are just, it's planned obsolescence, right?
Well, true, but planned obsolescence has been going on in America with good old Made in America stuff for a while too. I mean, Tocqueville talked about that in like circa 1830s when he visited the America.
Well, yeah, I mean, 100% if you sell a product, you're not going to try to sell it once and have the best product ever that nobody ever has to buy another one. I mean, that's kind of stupid. I mean, this is why they have new software and new updates and new versions and stuff just on intellectual property, like things like software and intellectual property. Um, but I mean, it's we do tend to furnish most of our world. I mean, just look around your room right now. How many things would have cost a lot more money had they been made in America?
Oh,
Um,
definitely. And the focus in economic policy for a long time has been to make everything better for the consumer, that low prices will just solve all the problems. And that's one of the things that this new right that I have a lot of disagreements with as someone who was a Republican for about 12 years when I bought into the whole idea that they're the party of business. I like business. Tell me you're going to cut taxes. And it's like,
Free market, free
yeah,
market.
free market. Yeah, it's like when you scratch a dog on its belly and it starts
Yeah,
shaking
yeah,
its leg.
yeah.
Yeah. But I have a lot of disagreements with people like, say, J.D. Vance. But one thing where, he does, and Trump as well for that matter, make a valid point that we focus too much on just making prices lower for consumers and not enough on the job that provides you the revenue, the income, so that you can buy nice stuff and
Yeah.
provide for your family.
Yeah, and it's really a disservice to the rest of the world as well, right? Because, what we've done is, I mean, it's, I don't know. I mean, in my mind, it's borderline criminal what we do and what we accept. That, these kids are, I mean, you go look it up. These kids are scaling fish in Vietnam for, you know, 12 cents a week or whatever it comes down to. Horrific, like all kinds of problems with their hands and joints and stuff. I mean, what we're doing is we're just offshoring our, so we have environmental policies and, rules on how child labor laws and all that stuff, and we just offshore it and look the other way as we buy the, $12 sweatshirt at, whatever discount chain you go to. We buy the cheap iPhone or they're not even cheap, but we know that they're, these kind of all this technology that we have is made in factories in other countries where they don't have the same environmental policy. And Intel used to make chips in Washington State. They don't anymore. They used to have a factory right over here near me in Folsom, and they don't.
Yeah. I mean, there is a TSMC. I think under the Chips and Sciences Act, which is heavily subsidized, that's basically what it's doing, is paying companies like TSMC, I think it's called, to build
Taiwan
factories.
Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, I think
Yeah,
is what it is.
yeah. So companies like that are being incentivized through very large subsidies to build factories in places like, I want to say, Arizona and I think Wisconsin. A factory
Mm.
recently is uh, up and running in one of those two places, as I recall. But yeah, I mean, there's that component to it, the jobs part. Tariffs do have a place, but 100% tariffs on everything is only going to result in, at least in the short run, higher prices for consumers. So if we're trying to solve inflation, it's sort of a different topic than what we're discussing. But if we are trying to solve inflation, just doing a tariff on every country, even our good neighbor to Canada, Canada to the north, and Mexico, etc., might not be the best policy. There might be an unintended consequence from that.
But
But
that's the whole thing about this, right? Is that the economics and everything, it all ties together, right? So you can't talk about H-1B visas without talking about economic policy, without talking about immigration, without talking about, because they all tie together. It's not about just one thing that you're gonna check the box and like that's enough. We're done. Uh, we're gonna put a 100% tariff on everything, and we're gonna solve. It's they're all interconnected, and we seem to as a society have a hard time connecting the dots when it comes to these things. We continually make these bad decisions. And we can't. It's just like we can't logically like connect the dots when it comes to policy.
right,
We think like, oh, electric cars are good. Well, we don't have enough power to generate right now to cover what we have or in the next 20 years. So it's an answer and it's a piece of the puzzle. Don't get
right.
me wrong, but like you can't just like if all of a sudden all gas cars went away and everyone had an electric car, how are we going to power them?
Hmm.
We're just you're gonna leave your power off for half the day because we don't have enough in the grid, national grid, to cover everything. I mean, it's this, and these are the types of things that are very difficult for people or in general to make these leaps, to connect these dots. Like, oh, California, where I live in 2032 or whatever it is, no more gasoline cars being sold, new ones. We already have brownouts in California.
Yeah.
Anyways, we're getting way off base here. We'll talk about that on another show. But didn't you have like some trivia or something before we get too far out in the weeds?
Yes. All right, so we had our Linux shirts that we made.
Mm-hmm.
But, Robert, you probably know this. What is the mascot of FreeBSD?
Is it, you know what? Is it a FreeBSD? I don't know. The Linux mascot I know.
Right.
I don't know. The Linux mascot is a penguin.
Right. It is a demon.
Do you have the same one?
No, we should have talked about this on the last episode, but no, FreeBSD, Unix, or one of the flavors of Unix, I guess, has a demon as their mascot.
Oh, that makes sense because they have the daemon. Okay, I get that. I get that.
Yeah, because it's the, I guess you could speak with more authority on this, but it's the name of a background process in computing where...
It's actually daemon is what
Daemon.
I think they just so I think they wanted it to be daemon. I don't know. Who knows? There's probably some lineage there. There's probably some idea, but it's DAEMON.
Okay.
And what it is, a daemon runs, yes, a process. So in a Linux environment, that's what they're running, and that's what they call a process. In Windows, it's typically a service it's referred to. Yes, that makes sense. So a daemon for the daemon. Well, and Linux just gets Linux got its start from Unix, right? So that's why it's Linux.
Yeah, and then what is it? Mac OS, I guess, is based on Unix when Steve Jobs was
Now it is, yeah. Hadn't always been a flavor of Linux, but it is since OS X. I believe I'm correct in that. Feel free to call me out in the comments, man. We got one comment who was on our last show who was a pretty sweet. We appreciate you, bro. Glad you commented on our stuff. Keep them coming. And sent us some revelation stuff about the false prophet. I'm not sure who he was referring to, but either way, we'll take it, bro. Well, we'll take it.
Yeah, we gave him a heart.
Yeah, I'm for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
my only pivot point from that is we have these multiple operating systems, which might seem silly. Couldn't you just have an operating system for everything? I mean, you don't have to have a Mac to do like video editing. If you have a gaming Windows machine that can do super sweet gaming, it can do video editing, etc. You could have everything on a Linux. You won't be able to run Adobe Photoshop and Premiere and stuff, but there's alternative softwares out there. But we live in a world where you can even use FreeBSD if you want, let alone various flavors of Linux. Linux is no longer just for servers and for geeks who hate Apple and Microsoft equally or as much, but it's like it's the go-to powerhouse option for like deep learning and that kind of thing. So it has its value proposition. Of course, Apple has the whole creatives kind of like to use it, and then enterprise for Microsoft. But there's different options, and you don't have to do one or the other. But we live in a flexible technological space and era right now in our economy, so we can walk and chew gum, have multiple operating systems, and I think. Call me an idealist, but I think we can reform both our education system and, dare I say, our immigration system at the same time. And I would say if we're going to say that, we'd have zero population growth if we don't have immigration, then we owe it to also reform the education system, because otherwise you're just feeding into that xenophobia. You're just feeding into the idea that the next time there's an economic crisis, some politician will be able to point to some immigrant community and make them the scapegoat. So absolutely make sure that people have opportunities to learn and grow, and they're not trying to be dinosaurs, but they have a realistic opportunity to do something that might otherwise be impossible if not for a stellar education system. And I think the key to that is flexibility, and part of that, I think, is doing a better job with kids that have learning disabilities and developmental disabilities, because a lot of times you're dealing with people that have average or above average IQs. Elon Musk says that he's autistic. I don't know if that's a clinical diagnosis or not, but let's just say it's true. A lot of times kids who come from that world that don't have the social capital he does are not destined to be the richest man in the world. And I would like them to at least have the opportunity to, be an awesome car mechanic or an awesome geologist or whatever it is they want to do, to at least have an opportunity to get in the ring and fight for what they want. But the key is flexibility. Just like our sponsor, Terra Logos, they've been designing shovels.
Hey, wow, we got a sponsor?
Well, no, we don't. But I had a tagline for them. Shovels that are so
tagline.
Yeah, they're so effortless to handle. Imagine your they're as effortless to handle as your grandma stirring cream and sugar into her morning coffee when she buries grandpa in the backyard. But no, we don't have a sponsor. But imagine if we did. And imagine if parents were able to, if technology was able to unleash the leisure time that they needed to provide that social capital and that boost of momentum so their kids could succeed, because parents are part of the equation too, and technology can play a positive role.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you believe that, I got some cryptocurrency to sell you.
That reminds me of our other sponsor, Anticoin, the only coin based off of antimatter.
Oh, we have another sponsor.
No, but imagine if we did. These are just some ideas.
Imagine an antimatter. All right, well, folks, as usual, I think we're going to wrap it up. We went a little longer than usual. And, of course, Patrick, we have
accomplished nothing.
Right. See you next time.